Steven, where are you? Hello, Steven? No, this is not a voicemail. This is me. This is me, Jared. I'm flying solo this week, as you know, if you listened last week. Steven is on vacation. Yeah, he is down the shore with his 37 family members in multiple houses, living it up on the beach. I mean, I don't know how much. Actually, the weather should be pretty nice there. I heard the water was like 64 degrees, which means that the wind blowing off the water would be a little cooler because we've been in a heat dome of like 90 some degrees every day. And yesterday wasn't bad, but it was like windy as hell. I mean, it was like Haktua girl was out there just blowing, huffing and puffing and just blowing. The only thing it didn't happen, I didn't get spit on. And that's the only difference between us and the Haktua girl. What a viral moment that whole Haktua girl is. But that's a study for business, is that if I were her, I would have signed with Barstool Sports real fast and done a merch deal where they give her 50% and they handle everything else. They just give her the 50% of the sales. And it would have been probably well over $1 million if that happened. I mean, that's something that, my business brain would personally do. Anyway, this week, flying solo, I've got a bunch of questions from you guys that you submitted on the submit line, the text line. And for anybody overseas, someone did mention you can't text in if you're from overseas. So people also put up stuff on Facebook. I got a bunch of questions. I will tell you, the Facebook questions were better than the questions that came in via my text line. I don't know if that says that I shouldn't do the text line anymore or I should do the text line. I mean, questions came in and I appreciate you guys doing that. I just thought some of the questions on Facebook were slightly better. I don't even use that. I really don't use Facebook that much because I stopped using it personally. I also stopped using it business-wise. I mean, I barely use it business-wise because I just post on there, but it's still a valuable platform. But I'll tell you, though, the more you separate yourself from social media stuff, the happier you are. I guess ignorance might be bliss, or you might just not be as pissed off from time to time. Like, if I could cut the Instagram looking and just post there my own stuff, then it would be better. But I totally cut Facebook out, which means I don't ever go through there and see people posting there, which is in some ways good and in other ways bad because you miss certain events that people do, like life events and whatever. It is what it is. But I'm not sure that we're going to have an episode next week because I'm going to be in Chicago on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for the Phillies. The Phillies are going out to Chicago. I am continuing my 4x5 project out there because I like going to the older parks. And I also get to see Manny Ortiz, and I know the team photographer for the Cubs, so that means I can just go do whatever I want. It really doesn't mean that. I've already, I get warned, like, don't go there. You're not allowed there, but we'll see what I end up doing. They are very helpful for helping me get into certain spots that normally you can't. I like to show up to the stadium super early, so we'll see. We'll see what I end up accomplishing there. But for this week, I am flying solo. I've got a bunch of questions to answer for RAWtalk 108. Next week's a holiday week anyway. I don't even know if we'll get Photo News Fix, because Dan's on vacation next week. Steven's on vacation this week. I'm going to be out of town next week partly. So I think we just have to probably call it a holiday, and it's a summer thing, and we won't be doing it, which I hope you guys understand. Today was leg day, so that's why I'm a little tired. It was really hard leg day. Leg day is always difficult, but I sweated, especially when it's 90. Well, it was only 77, but the humidity level is pretty high. So in the basement, even though I have a dehumidifier, you still sweat, which is a good thing. All right, should we jump right into this? If you ever want to text me, you could do that at 313-710-9729. That is our text line number. I'm going to go through these questions. I'm going to answer them, and hopefully you get something out of this. I know it's slightly different. There's also not a lot of news other than the Sigma announced the 18 to 50 crop sensor RFS lens. So the first RF lens from Sigma is now available. I did review it. It's over on the YouTubes right now. You can check it out. It's a fine lens. It's $600. It does what it needs to do. It's an 18 to 50 2.8. It's better than any kit lens that you can get from any manufacturer because it's a straight 2.8 and not just a 6.3 or a 3.5 to 6.5 or 6.56 or whatever. Okay. We've got David Schroomberg. My question, what was the impetus for starting on the 4x5 project? Did you have inspiration from spending so much time at the ballpark the past 2 years? Was it venturing to other stadiums? Was it from some photographers or books of the past? Or is it a desire to capture, recreate a sense of emotion from your youth? Or a combination of all of them? No, I mean, it's more so the opposite of what you said right here. Did you have inspiration from spending so much time at the ballparks for the past 2 years? No, actually, I was tired of shooting the same shit over the last 2 years. It's rinse and repeat, day in and day out, shooting 30 frames a second or whatever your cameras are capable of doing, and just taking the same pictures over and over. It never changes. It gets monotonous. Just like any type of photography gets monotonous, baseball started to get monotonous. That's why last year there were times where I would just set the camera to single shot, and it would be like you take one picture every time you press the button, and that was my challenge. I have the luxury of doing that. The working photographers there, they don't. They have to continue to do their job. This is their job. The reason that I decided to do this year is I was tired of shooting the same shit over and over, and I wanted a challenge. So I thought, I always wanted to try and shoot like the photographers used to do back in the 40s and 20s and 30s. I don't know why I went 20s before 30s, but the 40s, the 30s, the 20s, and they were out there shooting with, press cameras and very similar to what I'm using, with a different lens that allowed them to be at a higher aperture to get more things in focus. And so I've modified the camera. The camera's been modified to accept a different lens that they didn't have access to back in the day, because it was a World War II Army lens. They were all using 5.6s, and which was more like a 2.8 at the time, but you could get stuff in focus. That's where f8 and be there came in. F8 and be there was a statement that photographers used to say: set it to f8 and be where you need to be and take the picture. So these photographers knew that if they set it to f8 and they were like 10 feet away from the subject, the chances of getting something in focus was more likely than not. And that's what f8 and be there meant. Now, the difference between what I'm doing and what they did is I'm on a tripod because I'm using a lens that has the equivalent of an f1 aperture on a 35 millimeter camera, which means depth of field is extremely important, and there's no way you can be at like f2.5 where that lens is and be there. You just can't, because you don't know where the subjects are going to be. If they're off by a fraction of an inch, your focus is off. And I just wanted it, look, if I was to shoot it at f8, it would just look like a snapshot that anybody else could do. I also can't be 10 feet from the subject anymore when it comes to action, where these guys were allowed to be on the field. I am not allowed on the field during a game. No one is, other than the umpires and the players. Like, oh, she's on the field. So that's my answer to that. There was also this photographer named Polin. He shot in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and into the 50s, glass plates with his cameras. Pretty incredible stuff. I have his books. I have two of his books, and I looked at them, and it's interesting to see what he was doing back then. All right, Steve Wilson, how long did it take you to be comfortable enough with the baseball players to allow them to trust you in doing shots of them? So the baseball players have seen me for the past 2+ years now. They've seen me out there shooting, so they're familiar with me. But when you break out a camera that is 80 years old and different than what everybody else is doing, they want to know something about it. So, and by the way, not all of these questions are going to be about, I think this is the only stuff about my 4x5 right now. So when you break out something different, these guys are like, oh, they're interested. What is this? And so I took a bunch of pictures to start, and they weren't of portraits, but they were from the field and different things that I was able to capture. And I came back and I showed the pictures to the players. And instantly, when you do that, you get credibility. Holy shit. And I don't think they understand manual. I don't think they understand the whole process of me developing and doing the whole thing. But it's a whole thing. And so they see it and they see the results and they're like, that's unique. They may not know why it's unique and different, but that allows me to get in there and ask for portraits. So once you show people work, they feel more confident and competent, or in your competence to get the job done. Bill, did I say that was from Steve Wilson? Billy Griffiths. Which podcast for business/marketing side of photography would you recommend? Have you ever been a member of a photography business network? Sue Bryce, PhotoBiz, or something like that? ? I don't listen to any photography podcasts. I'm not a fan of most. I don't want to listen to that. I love business podcasts. I listen to Pivot, which is Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. I'm a big fan of listening to that. They do it 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. And Scott Galloway, I really like him. I think he's fantastic, says it like it is, isn't afraid to push some buttons, and isn't afraid to be wrong and then admit that he's wrong. But also he gives his thoughts and his opinions based on his expertise, and it's not always the popular thing to say. So I like Pivot as a weekly business podcast, or 2 days a week, where they talk about the latest news in tech and business, and I like listening to that. There's things like Business Wars, where you go and these guys wrote scripts and listen to these stories of different businesses going head to head. Those are good. How I Built This is obviously one of the best business podcasts out there to learn, and I suggest that if you I stopped listening to How I Built This a little after the pandemic. I got tired of the resilience. They did a separate podcast called Resilience, how people are bouncing and handling the pandemic. It just got so fucking annoying. It's like the same repetitive stuff over and over. But if you go back to the very beginning of How I Built This, start with all the old episodes. The first one, Sarah Blakely from Spanx, amazing. And they're a little shorter at the beginning, but Guy Raz finds his step, his foothold, and just gets better and better as the interviews go on. And there's great interviews. I suggest you listen to some of the ones where you don't even know who the people are. You might learn a lot from those. But there are the people that you know, like Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines, hearing about the stories of how they got started. Mark Cuban, Instagram. Just there's so many really good, hundreds of business listens there for How I Built This. And then I just heard of Acquired, which has been going on since like 2015. 2005. Sorry, 2005 maybe. I don't know. They've been podcasting for a long time. Maybe it's 2009. I don't know. They've been podcasting a long time, but it's really good. I like how they bounce stuff off of each other and talk about businesses that have been acquired and give them grades. And sometimes you go back to the original ones. I think it was 2015 because I think it was 10 years ago they were talking about stuff, like when Instagram was purchased and stuff. So I think it's very interesting to listen to, especially going back 10 years on some of these things, so that you can hear what they were talking about then, and you already know how the future panned out. So I listened to those. In terms of business networking groups, I was in a thing called Le Tip many, many years ago in 2008, 2007, before I started Frono's Photo. That was it was good and bad. You know, it was just a way to get out and be in a networking group. The way that it worked was there would be one photographer in the group. Then there was like a banker. Then there was the florist. Then there was the realtor. Then there was a fitness person. So there was a HVAC person. And the whole point is that you use your networks. That if someone needs what are they called? I just said it. An HVAC person. You would recommend them, and you would pass the tip to them to then follow up. And it was like a networking social group. You would meet at 7 a.m. You'd have breakfast, you talk, and then you get to work. And that's the thing. I don't know that I'd be sitting here today if I wasn't in the group. I'm not recommending getting into it, but one of the tips that was passed from a fitness guy was a photographer, was a fitness guru on the internet who at the time in like 2009 needed a photographer to go to Florida to photograph his event. This guy had like 90,000 people on his email list back then, which was a ton in 2009 time. And I went to that group. I went and photographed that thing for like $1,000, and then I met someone there, and I went and photographed another internet marketing event, met someone there and went and photographed another one, and I met people and learned a lot. I really learned what not to do on the internet from these people, but the connections I made helped me start FronosPhoto.com. I met people who could build the WordPress website. I met people who could help me set up an email list. So I met these people along the way that really helped me, and that was because I met someone through that networking group. It just happened that way. So yeah, I did that group. I'm not sure I recommend them. They're fine. Yeah. So no, I don't know about Sue Bryce's stuff, PhotoBiz or something like that. I wouldn't do an online network. That's not my thing. I think they're just money makers. I think things in person are much better. Good question though. Paul Chapman moved over to mirrorless and got the Canon R7 last year. As an amateur, is it worth continuing to pick up cheap EF glass or move over to RF lenses? Look, if you can pick up 70 to 200s, 24 to 70s, you can pick up the really good pro glass that's EF for way less than, a third of the price of a full frame RF lens at this point. By all means, go for it. Especially if you're an amateur. The lenses are going to adapt perfectly with the adapter. You're going to get great results, and you're going to save a lot of money, and there's no reason to dump a shit ton of money. Yes, the RF lenses are better, in my opinion, and you don't need to worry about the adapter, but save the money. Get some really good EF glass. Nothing wrong with that at all. Stephanie Ferranti. What are your thoughts on Lightroom's newest update of generative remove? I just tried it after I read this. I didn't know that it existed because I don't take things out of photos. I think it's pretty interesting. To be able to remove things and have it replaced and it looks like the background and you don't know that it was there is cool in certain situations. I'm not for taking subjects out of frames or objects out of frames. It should be there in a photojournalistic sense. Now, yesterday I needed to take some pictures of a bowling pin, and Steven has a setup upstairs that I used, but it wasn't wide enough, so some of the sides of the light stands and stuff were in the frame. For something like that, that's a commercial shoot where someone needs to use a plate, meaning they take the picture that I'm using and use it as a background in a presentation, I'm all for it in a situation like that because you could just shoot and then remove it and it would be fine. In that situation, I'm fine with it. In a photojournalistic professional situation, I'm really not fine with it. I do take out dust from my 4x5 stuff, so I use some form of AI there, I guess, because it's using AI healing just to basically get rid of the dust, but that's it. I'm getting rid of dust. Eric Nope. Yeah, N-O-P-P-E. Have you ever done nude photography? And if you did or would, what would be your workflow, specifically with your large frame film equipment? Well, it's the same for large format shooting as it is for shooting nudes. This is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. Men asking women to pose generally have this idea they want to shoot women naked. I mean, I love naked women. Who doesn't? Gay men? Gay men probably even like naked women too, but not in the same way that we like naked women. And by we, I mean non-gay people, straight. You know what I'm saying. Nothing wrong with that. Do I like photographing women nude? The answer is not really, because I don't care that much. It's also potential for getting in trouble in certain situations. And the times that I have done it where people have asked me, I make it abundantly clear like how professional we need to act during this shoot. If you would like to bring a friend to be there, perfectly fine. You want to bring a boyfriend, perfectly fine. Make it abundantly clear. Make sure you have all of this written down. You know, bring a friend. I want you to be comfortable. There will be no touching. I will not touch you. I will direct you this way. And you have to be so ungodly professional in this situation. You have to go beyond the normal of profession, in my opinion, unless she hits on you and she really wants to sleep with you, in which case I tell them to come back the next day. Can't do it during the photo shoot day. You got to do it the next day because you got to separate the two. That's happened before in the past, but during the actual shoot, you've got to be highly professional. That's it. There's nothing, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The workflow is simple. Whatever they're comfortable with, you do. Whatever you're comfortable with, you do. If you're not comfortable, you don't do it. Make sure you verbalize. You do not touch when it comes to posing. Be professional or don't do it at all. And don't be a GWC, a guy with a camera just looking to photograph nude women just because that's what you want to do. That's the reasons I'm not a big fan of shooting the nudes. Malmen. What's your preference for sports photos? A, shoot tight and cropped tighter, or B, shoot a little loose and crop for composition? Neither, Mac. Did I call him Mark? It's Mac. I took my glasses off because they were bothering me. The answer to this is neither. I rather not crop at all. I rather compose the way that I want to have it in the camera. This is a long time discussion that I've had, and people disagree with it, and I get it, especially in sports photography. There's different mindsets when it comes to sports photography. Mine, as a photojournalist, is I want to tell the story. I'd rather shoot and have breathing room. I rather shoot, but in some situations, having breathing room. Like, I want context to an image. If you're shooting a playoff game and all you shoot are baseball card photos that are tight at 400 millimeters and you can't tell that you're in a playoff game and you don't have the atmosphere and you're not capturing the action, that to me is a waste. And that's what a lot of news shooters are looking for. Getty Images will crop everything super tight. King Cropper himself, Bruce Bennett, will shoot all of the Stanley Cup game yesterday and then come back and shoot from across. He'll shoot from across the ice with like a 28-300 adapted and crop the shit out of it with his R5s because they're 45 megapixels, and that's what works for him. That's news photography. But that's not for me. That's not photojournalism, where I rather shoot the composition that I want it to be with breathing room and leading lines. I don't feel that you should shoot everything tight. I don't feel that you should shoot tight and then crop tighter. It just defeats the whole purpose. If all you're trying to do is show a batter's head or a guy running around the bases and you just crop it super tight, to me, there's no challenge in that. And that's just a waste. It's just a tight picture. A tight picture is a tight picture of a tight picture. I challenge you to show real, in my opinion, photos. Capture the moment. Tell the entire story. Challenge yourself not to crop. Just, that's my thoughts. Randy Smith, how do you manage to shoot so much free stuff like baseball? Where do you make your income? People ask this all the time. I have the luxury of making money from my YouTube channel, making money from my boot camps, making money from presets, making money from advertisers and sponsors, that it allows me to go shoot what I want to shoot when I want to shoot it and not have to worry about getting paid. To me, that's the ultimate goal of every photographer, is to be able to shoot what you want when you want, because you don't have to worry about getting paid. I remember someone calling me out, and it wasn't just Vanessa Joy. Someone else called me out, and they're like, "Oh, you're not really a real photographer if you aren't getting, you're not getting paid." And I'm like, well, isn't it the goal of every photographer to get to the point where you can shoot what you want and not have to take the jobs that you don't want to shoot because you have to get paid? And so I'm able, and I'm afforded the ability to shoot what I want for free if I want to shoot it, because I know that I'm going to generate revenue somewhere else. That's why I'm able to do what I want to do. I also don't like working for people. I will not be beholden to someone else's expectations. That's why I don't like photographing for people or businesses or corporations, is because there's an expectation. And as soon as there's an expectation, I'm not a fan of doing the shoot. I like when people are like, go do your thing. Or if I'm just doing my own thing and I'm not beholden to any one person or business or corporation, then it's all up to me to do what I want to do. And if I fail, it's on me. And if I succeed, it's on me. I don't have to worry about anything. It's just a much better place to be for me. Good question, Randy. Zachary, what is the best way to address a photographer being disrespectful to an environment without being rude to a client who might present as well, or might be present as well? Example, someone using confetti in a nature area where they are not supposed to, or a photographer abusing their assignment shooting areas privileges in a sports event. Should you just report them to the appropriate party or confront them yourselves? It's a very good question, Zachary. You got to speak up in certain situations. If a photographer is doing something wrong, like you're on the train tracks, get the fuck off the train tracks, asshole. That's probably what I would say. I will speak up at events. I will speak up if someone's treating someone poorly. You do have to be very careful these days. People carry guns. People know MMA. People want to fight. People are looking for issues. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't speak up when you need to. If someone is disrespecting someone, I will step in and say something. Leave them alone. Don't disrespect them. It's happened to me. I mean, I've been disrespected shooting weddings. No one else has stepped up to say something. Like I said something. I remember it was like somebody drunk at a wedding calling me like photo boy or some bullshit. And I'm like, oh, actually, I remember another one. That wedding, I told someone off. I was doing a 25-year or a 30-year high school reunion for someone. Funny enough, I got this job through that Le Tip group. It was a tip, and they wanted me to photograph it. It was really bad. The woman that hired me she was a drunk. She was a lush. She was always drinking. I saw her come out of the bathroom like she was getting sick because she drank too much. She's like, don't tell anybody about this. I was like, who am I going to tell about this? The problem was this reunion, these people were just getting drunk. They were acting like they were 16, 17 years old again. And there was this guy who looked like Billy Mays, this Billy Mays looking motherfucker who was treating me like shit. And I told him to fuck off. I just flat out said, don't treat me like shit. Don't talk to me like that in front of everybody the way that you're doing. I'm like, fuck you. And I have no problem with someone doing that. Sometimes people need to be put in their place. And if it means I leave the job, I'll leave the job. I actually said that. I think it was at a wedding. I was like, if you disrespect me again, I'm leaving. You want to disrespect me. And you go up to the bride and the groom and you say, look, your bridesmaids or your groomsmen are drunk. They're being disrespectful to me and my assistant or my other photographer. And if this continues, we're leaving. So you either get them under wraps or we're out. And it shouldn't have to deal with that. And so the thing is, when you talk about reaching the appropriate party, sometimes you can do that, but it's like being on an airplane. It's like reporting it to the flight attendant. It's just like, they don't want to deal with it, but that's sort of their job. So you got to be very careful in certain situations how you approach it. Now, if you're in nature and someone is using confetti, you'd be like, you're picking all of that up. Or you wait and see if they're going to pick it up. And if they don't, you tell them when they're about to leave, you got to pick all this shit up, guys. You can't do that. And if they're like, fuck you, go fuck yourself, it is what it is. Then you go clean it up. I was listening to Ryan Holiday. He does The Obstacle is the Way. He does a lot of stoicism stuff. I'm not considered I don't consider myself a stoic. I don't buy into a lot of it myself, but there are things that he says that are good. And he was talking about how he lives in this farm area in Austin, and it's not a very traveled road. It's a dirt road, and it became a road where people dump a lot of tires and garbage. And he got pissed off, and he's like, when's someone going to do something about this? And no one's doing anything about this. And he got to the point where he was like, if I just keep going by and I ignore this, then I'm complicit in the people that are dumping this. Instead of saying, when is someone going to do something about this, and waiting for someone else to do it, he's like, I am someone. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it piece by piece. He would take the tires, put them in the back of his truck, and he'd go and pay to have them removed. Yeah. Did he like having to pay for removing someone else's shit? No. But he took it upon himself to do something instead of just talk about it. And sometimes we got to do that. It's not easy. I mean, I used to, sometimes someone makes a mess, I'll grab the mop because I don't feel that the person, the custodian person, should be the one that has to clean up someone else's shit if they were being disrespectful. Give me the mop. I'm taking the mop and I'm cleaning. Like when I was a summer camp counselor. Yeah, I was a summer camp counselor. Best story ever was, okay, I want to tell the story. You play dodgeball. So I had like the 5, 6-year-old bunk, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. So they're younger. And there's always the athletic kid. There's the nerd kid. There's the fat kid. And then you play dodgeball. So, you're always going to get the fat kid out first generally because, he squeals like a pig. It's kind of funny, back in the day. But you know what? I wouldn't get him out first. What I would do is get out the most athletic kid first so that they knew what it was like to lose and not always win. I know that's not nice. And I would let the other kids hang around a little longer than they normally would to give them some self-esteem, to make them feel like they accomplished something. That's just what I would do. Okay, one other story from way back in camp days when I was like 11. And I've told this before, but some of you may never have heard this. We had a club called soccer. Now, that's where you would go in the morning and you would have a soccer team and you would play and you would have captains that would pick the team each day. And today, on that one day, I was the captain. And so I got first pick. And when I got that first pick, I picked the kid who never got picked first. I picked the kid who got picked last all the time. I made him my first pick. And then the other team takes the best kid. And then I picked the second from last kid who never gets picked. And then third from last, and pick the worst kids first. And you would think that we would go on to lose because we weren't that good, because we had the worst players. But we actually tied the soccer game that day. And the moral of the story there is I would assume that the best players took it for granted that they were the best and that they were going to probably kill us because they were better than us. But the kids that I picked that day played their asses off because I gave them something to fight for, right? I picked them first over the other kids, and we proved something, right? We proved something. And I don't know why I did that. I guess why I would do something like that is my mom was always the champion of the underdog. My dad was always the champion of the underdog. My mom was smaller when she was younger, and they put her into a younger camp group just because she was small, but she was 3 years older than, say, a 5-year-old, and they were putting her with the kids, and she shouldn't have been with them. And that's just what they did in the fucking 50s. They were fucking stupid in the 1950s. They did lobotomies. They did shock therapy. Fucking dumb shit. Man, did they do dumb shit. Like, a kid is small, so we need to put them with the smaller kids or they'll get hurt. And it's like, no. Someone else is small. They're not mentally small. Anyway, back to the story at the camp that I was getting to is when I was a camp counselor, say my kid made a mess in the lunch hall, in the cafeteria, or someone threw up, I would go get the mop myself. And I didn't want someone else having it. I felt it was my responsibility as the camp counselor, as these kids' counselors, to do it myself. I just felt that that's the right thing to do. We clean up. You do it. You clean up after yourself. You clean up after other people. You do speak up in these situations. If you're at a concert and someone keeps stepping in your way, I will warn people. Like, I've had this happen where it's like, dude, you keep getting in the way. You need to be mindful of your position and mindful of everybody else. Now, in certain situations, if everybody's moving, like when I was photographing Bernie and we're walking backwards and there's a bunch of press, you do your best not to get in other people's ways, but you understand that it's fast moving and you got to understand that you might get in someone's way and someone might get in yours, but you work together. Hey, I'm right here. Okay, no problem. All right. Hey, I'm going to go low. You go high. All right. You're high. I'm going to go down here and shoot. Okay, cool. Right. And if you've set up your position hours in advance and someone else shows up late and then tries to get in front of you, there's a problem. You tell them to get the fuck out of the way. Sometimes you just have to say it like it is and get out of and just tell people to get out of your way. You were here. Don't be disrespectful. You need to move because that's just the nature of it. So that's what you need to consider in those situations. So yeah, if someone's doing something in nature you don't like, call them out on it. Obviously, make sure that you don't get into like a physical altercation. Adam Finger, who probably should have been named Freddie. He's probably heard that joke before. What is the appropriate tip amount for the boot camp instructor? Yes, this is going back to tipping discussion a few weeks ago. The appropriate tip amount for the boot camp instructor is 0. You're paying to come to my boot camp. You're not tipping me. There's one spot available for the second boot camp on July 27th. So it's bit.ly/July 27 Fro. There's one spot available. I'm not going to promote anymore because it's just one spot. And if it fills, it fills. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But awesome that we've sold 29. I've sold 29 of 30. Adam Quinn. Better photographers don't need to crop, quote, is a partially true statement. I photograph high school sports with an R6 and an EF 300 2.8, which is not enough reach for baseball and softball. Should be enough for softball because it's a smaller field. I bought an R5 because it's a lot cheaper than a 400 2.8, so I could crop in, which is when I discovered just how inferior cropping is to getting it right optically, and what is in focus for a full shot isn't necessarily in focus when zoomed in. I don't think people realize this reality. I realize that reality. I've always realized that reality, and it's a good point. This goes back to the having a converter versus cropping. look, if something's out of focus, the more you zoom in, the more prevalent the out of focus is going to be. Also, the bokeh is not going to look the same. Also, if you're shooting at higher ISOs and you crop in, it's going to look not as clean. So, yeah, the R5, yeah, you could crop it. Your focus should be right with that, unless it's just an older lens and it's not focusing as well. But yeah, if there's an imperfection and you crop, all you're doing is enlarging that imperfection. My personal thing, as you know, is not to crop. That's me. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't. If you feel that that's for you, fine. I just like to set the challenge to everybody to try and compose in the camera and not in the darkroom. And I think you'll see a major difference. I think you'll be much happier with your work when you start capturing it that way as well. Frankie Mons. Hey, Jared or Steve. No, Steven's away. What are your thoughts on professional event photographers shooting auto? I'm writing this from my friend's bar mitzvah. Hey. I don't even know the words to that song, but that's what my Jew bear says. The rabbi bear that has the song. The photographer is shooting an R5 with L series 2.8 lenses, but every time he turns on his camera, I see the green box. Now, are you talking about a green box on the back of the camera, or are you talking about a green box on top? I think he's talking about the green box on top of the camera. But hold on, let me go look at the R5 and see if this has a green box. No, it doesn't. There's no green box on top of the camera. So is he talking about there's no green box on top of the camera. You might be seeing a focus box. That's what shows up as a green focus box. There's no switch on top of the camera that shows the green mode. So I think you might be looking at the wrong thing. It might just be in single focus or something. So unless you see it legitimately say auto in the green mode, look, I don't think professionals should be shooting in full auto. Part of what I'll teach at the boot camp is don't panic when you're in manual and then throw it into auto because you're afraid, and now auto is shooting at 5.6 and 6.3. I do say that when you're starting, if you want to shoot an aperture priority, that's fine. That was what I used to do back in the day. But in this day and age with electronic viewfinders, there's really no need to do that. Everything's right in front of your face, and you should be able to get the exposure right. Dan Emerson, I use two Canon R6s, one usually with a Sigma 24-70 or the Tamron 70-210, and the other usually has a Sigma 150-600 on it. I've been told that my gear is unprofessional and not up to caliber to shoot professional sports events, though I photographed for IMSA and a professional soccer team. And many big name professional musicians. I currently work with different Ford organizations. I have lost jobs. I've lost opportunities for jobs because of the gear that I have. How do you overcome this when you're doing the best you can with what you have and providing results that people want? I feel like it's a double-edged sword. Thank you. So this is interesting because hold on, I got to take a note. I just want to look somebody up. Well, by saying the name Sword, or saying Sword, reminded me of somebody that I once worked with that I didn't continue to work with, but I want to look them up. All that should matter are the results, not what you're shooting with. Now, with that being said, one of the reasons I liked using a D2H and larger camera back in the day is it made me look more professional. I may not have been professional, I may not have been good yet, but it made me look the part. And looking the part sometimes is half the battle, having the gear to do so. But if someone doesn't hire you after looking at your work, but they should just be looking at your work, they shouldn't be looking at your gear. If the work speaks volumes, then it's fine. If the work doesn't speak volumes, then yeah, it might be the gear. So, but you have a 24-70 and you have a 70-210. I don't know what a Tamron 70-210 is. I know they make the 70-180 2.8, and sometimes the lenses don't look professional, but if you're getting the results, that's all that matters. You shouldn't really be losing jobs because of that. I mean, I remember taking a phone call from someone who was looking for a wedding photographer. This is when I was shooting weddings, and they said your camera must have 8 megapixels or 12 megapixels at the time. And at the time, I had a D2H, and I tried to explain to them, I'm like, I have what is called a Nikon D2H. It's a professional body, and I use professional lenses. I can go get a Rebel that's 8 megapixels, that's a piece of shit and not going to be as good as my camera, and use a kit lens, but they don't understand this stuff. My 4 megapixel camera is going to outshoot an 8 megapixel, well, they were all crop sensor at the time, a Rebel, and I'm going to use good glass, and someone shooting a Rebel isn't, so the megapixels don't matter. I didn't want to work for them anyway, didn't get the job. So it's tough, Dan, in this situation, but really you shouldn't be losing jobs if your work is quality and you show them your work. The gear shouldn't matter. Mark, just Mark. I've been a part-time cycling photographer for 3 years. I still have my 9-to-5 job and not planning to leave it. My question is about pricing my gigs. 90% of my jobs are for brands or cycling teams that hire me for the race day, shooting start of the race, follow the riders on course, which is pretty cool to be able to do that and shoot the finish line. I'm having trouble finding the right number to charge the brands. On the side, on one side, the money I make is nice, but it doesn't pay my bills. Or on the other side, I want to be fair to my time, work, and to my fellow photographers that do this full time, which they're already going to see you taking their job. They're going to say that anyway. I currently charge $1,500 plus 500 travel expenses for a gallery of 100 to 200 pictures of the sponsored riders and the full commercial license. Jesus Christ. Do you think this is a good number, or am I leaving money on the table? Also, I usually work with the same 4 to 5 brands and would like to broaden my range of brands, but this is limited market and very populated with other great photographers. What suggestions do you have to work with more brands? Well, first, $1,500, and I'm not a fan of saying, I never am a fan of saying I'm going to deliver a certain number of pictures. I'm going to deliver whatever the keepers are. I'm not going to put a number on it because I'm not chasing shooting a number. You're going to get the best of the best with Honor Sir. I'm going to shoot those images. Whatever the total number is, it's probably going to be more than that, but I don't like to guarantee because I'm not chasing bad photos just to up my numbers. Travel expenses are fine, but your travel expenses are your travel expenses. How much does it cost to get there? How much is a hotel and lodging? That should be whatever the cost is, they should be paying. And $1,500, how long is this event? You are riding. Does that seem low? The answer to that seems to be yes, especially when you're giving them full commercial licenses. You should be getting paid more. That's for you to decide how much more, and to work with your clients, especially if these are long-term clients that you've been working with for a while. They are getting full commercial license use for $1,500. I mean, you should be making $2,500 to $3,000 to $5,000 for a big event, especially if they're going to get full commercial licenses. Now, this comes back to that earlier question about how do I generate revenue? You have a 9-to-5, so you make your money elsewhere. That's not saying that you shouldn't make money being a photographer. That also means that other photographers who do this for a living will get pissed off that you're doing a job for less and getting it than they're getting. They're not getting it, and that's their livelihood. You need to make the decision, and you need to see if that the market can handle what you're looking to charge. I think the travel expenses should be covered regardless of what the price is. And if you're traveling to an event and it's a day of an event and you had to get there the day before and you're leaving the day after, that's 3 days of work, not 1 day. So $1,500 instantly comes down to not very much money, $500 a day, which isn't bad, but then you're giving licenses to everything. So you might need to up this, ask them what their budgets can handle, especially if you know these people intimately, talk to them and see what they can pay you. Like, look, I need to get paid more. And sometimes you may lose the job. So you just have to be prepared for that. Scott, podcast question. Are there any exercises you find to be completely useless or dangerous that you see being promoted by social media gym influencers? I don't watch social media gym influencers, really. I don't follow what they do. I think a lot of people, I think what's dangerous is one of those guys like what was that guy called who said he wasn't on steroids but was, who's on that caveman diet or whatever the fuck it is, you know, the meat he eats only meat and then bone marrow and stuff. Yeah, I forget what he's even called, but finally, like he looks such in great shape, but he was obviously on steroids but said he wasn't. And so I don't like anything that gives people false hope that you can take a shortcut to success. Anything that is a shortcut to success. Fasting. Liquid fast, like a juice cleanse. You know what a juice cleanse is? A juice cleanse is starving yourself. Oh, and by the way, I think FedEx is here at my door, and let's see if they ring the doorbell. I really don't. And so let me preface this. Not all FedEx, UPS, or USPS drivers are assholes. We have a note on the door. I'm watching the guy right now. The note says, do not leave packages unattended. I have 2 packages coming with more film and more developer. And this guy always refuses. He doesn't ring the doorbell. Or he rings the doorbell and leaves. So at least I get a notice, but it says, don't leave it on the doorstep if I'm not here. Is he going to ring the doorbell? Is he going to ring the doorbell? He's leaning over. He's walked up. He didn't ring the doorbell. I think he barely knocked on the door. No. I'm going to go fucking yell at this guy. Dude, ring the doorbell. I'm coming. I'm not cutting out that delay. Not cutting it out. He didn't ring the doorbell. I think what he did is he barely knocked. Now, there's an outside door, there's an inside hallway, and another door. So how would I hear that? There's a fucking ring doorbell on the door, on the door jamb. You can't miss it. So the guy leaves the packages on the doorstep. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't know that. Or if I'm here and I didn't see the white vehicle drive by the front, because I can see out the front almost, then I would. This is what pisses me off. How do you suck at your job so bad? And to the person that is a UPS driver, FedEx driver, USPS, DHL, whatever, who does a good job, it's not you. It's these type of people who suck at their job. Like this was the knock. I think I saw it was this. Right? Like, how is anybody going to hear it? Ring a doorbell. No one hears doors being knocked on, you asshole. And there's a note that says ring the fucking doorbell. God. Fucking suck at their job. Anyway, back to Scott's question. I don't like anybody that takes a shortcut. I was talking about juice cleanses. Juice cleanses is just starving yourself for days. Of course you're going to lose weight when you juice cleanse, but it's not healthy. Everybody wants a shortcut to success. They don't exist in anything. Shortcuts to success don't get you where you need to go. They're momentarily effective sometimes, but not long-term effective. So I don't like any social media stuff in the fitness world that is promoting bullshit. A lot of these guys are fakers and girls are faking what they do and then try to sell it to people. Joe Martello, do you remember the first time you got a press pass? Any fun stories behind getting your first one? Yeah, so my cousin worked as an intern at the Philadelphia Flyers. He wanted to be a journalist, and he went on to school and he became a journalist for a newspaper, the Marietta Times Post or Gazette or whatever the hell it was called back in the day. And he worked his way up in Sarasota, whatever, moved to Florida. But he was an intern for the Philadelphia Flyers in the PR department. So when you know someone, it helps you get a pass. So I was able to get a photo pass at like 14 years old. I think someone dropped me off at the game, and I was going to shadow one of the photographers that would shoot for the team. I'm not going to name names, but anybody in Philly who shot the Flyers in the 90s and probably the 80s and into the 2000s know this guy. This guy was a drunk, a misogynist. Now, misogynist, I like women, as we discovered earlier when I talk about nudity. You can think the stuff, but I think where it becomes misogyny is when you start verbalizing like, hey, look at that girl's tits in row 12. I'm 14, sir. I'm 14. You're talking about the girl's... I'm 14. Like, maybe you don't show up drunk and don't say dumb shit like that. It's all right to think it, right? People think that you got to be so pure and you don't think it. No, I think it all the time. every girl that walks by, I don't, and it makes me feel like there's something wrong with me. There's not. I don't know. Like you what am I trying to say here? Every girl that walks by, I'm like, she's hot. Well, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I want to sleep with her. That doesn't mean I'm going to. And it doesn't mean I'm going to yell that to someone. But that's just what goes through my brain. I'm a guy. And I think that's what goes through guys' brains. And you can't tell me that you don't think that. And if you don't think that as a straight person, but I'm sure gay guys probably look at guys walking down the street. They probably look at my ass and they're like, damn, look at that ass. What I do to that ass. Right? Gay guys, text in. 313-710-97. No, don't text me. I don't want to give you my number. I don't want you to think I'm gay. I don't care what you think. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And that's a joke. And you should be able to joke about this stuff. I know we have gay listeners. We've always had gay listeners. And Steven, I shouldn't mention Steven's gay listener from back in the day. I'm not gonna do it. But this guy was a misogynist for that. He'd send screen grabs of Steven. Not good. That guy wasn't good. That's not nice. So anyway, I got the press pass. That was the first time I had a press pass, and the guy was a drunk misogynist. Jason Avant, we're almost done here. Owner of an EOS R and do events, upgrade RF 24 to 105 f4 to a 24 to 72.8 or get a newer body. Already own an RF 70 to 200 2.8. When my wife doesn't have a gig, I use her R6 for a second body. I mean, at this point, the R is just so slow at 2 frames a second. You'd really want to go with something much better than that. So I would upgrade a body if you already have a 70 to 200 and 24 to 105. I would probably replace that 24 to 105 at some point in the future. But, I'm all about better glass. But right now I think that EOS R is probably not the camera. I mean, you could go get an R8 for $1,000 right now. And that is the same sensor as the R6 Mark II. So keep that in mind. Jason Avant. I just read that. Kenny, you bastard. Your thoughts on digital cameras making a strong comeback with the younger generation? My niece and nephew, plus their friends, like what I do with sports pics I take. They realize that the photos can't do the phone can't do the same. So now they're intrigued by the camera I use, and they use an R6 Mark II. Well, I thought this was going to go a different direction. Like kids are buying point and shoot cameras today, old elves and stuff, because they're like, it just looks so much better. Well, the truth of the matter is most things are going to look better than a cell phone. I mean, people can sit there still and tell you that cell phones look great. Yeah, cell phones are fine. Bigger sensors, better lenses, better flashes are always going to supersede that and give better quality, which gives better results. So I think every generation is going to see the difference. And that's how we grow photography is people start with a cell phone and then they get interested in better quality and they find me and other photographers like me on the internet and they start to learn. Eric, hey Jared, I'm an aspiring photographer who has been volunteering my time and services to friends and family members. I've done a dozen free shoots for people, but I'm having a hard time getting paid work. Any recommendations on what I can do to start getting paid work? Thank you for your suggestions. Yeah, you got to just start charging your friends and family. You've done a dozen free shoots. They're going to look at you as the person who does it for free. And if they were your friends and family, they should have handed you money anyway for, hey, thank you for your time, right? To just pay you. So you got to start somewhere. What is your time worth? Is it $50 an hour? Is it $100 an hour? How much is travel? How much is editing time, right? How much time are you spending? If it's 5 hours to do a 1 hour shoot because of the travel and the editing, you got to look at what is your time worth. And then you have to just start charging. You just have to just ask for the money. Mike Hills, are histograms becoming irrelevant? I don't use a histogram. Steven loves the histogram. I don't give a shit about it because I look at the EVF of the camera and go from there. I look at what the image looks like in front of me. I don't worry about some bullshit digital representation of exposure. I don't care about shooting to the right or shooting to the left. And the reason I stopped caring back in the day is when I shot concerts, all of the spike was to the left because everything else was underexposed when it was dark or was it the right? Whatever. It doesn't matter. It was all on one side or the other. So that's just something that didn't matter to me. Try is another question. I have a Nikon Z6 II, and I'm looking for a second camera. I shoot 99% stills and was looking at the Z6 III. Would it be worth it? Can you work it? Or would my money be better spent buying buying another Z6 II or even a Z7 II? I shoot street, event, portraits, and sports. The Z6 III, always step up. Never, in my opinion, you don't step sideways until you get the best of the best with Honor Sir, and there's really nowhere else to upgrade. I would never buy a second Z6 II right now. That's a waste of money. I would rather have you sell your Z6 II, not even have a backup, and get a Z6 III. But if you already have a Z6 II, then yeah, I would buy a Z6 III if you're sticking with Nikon. I wouldn't buy an A7. What is a Z7 II going to give you? More megapixels, but shitty autofocus. So you do events, street, and portraits and sports. That is a Z6 III all day. That's going to be the camera for you. Man, that FedEx stuff really pisses me off. It's always this driver. It's always the ground driver for FedEx that doesn't ring the doorbell. And I couldn't, I've said something to these people in the past. They just leave stuff and they go without ringing a doorbell. It literally says, do not leave stuff on my doorstep, period. And the reason you have a ring doorbell is so I can talk to the driver. If they ring the bell and I'm like, hey, I'm not there, don't leave it. But the thing is that these guys get paid per package. And if they leave the package, they get paid probably. And if they have to come back, it's more time out of their day. I get it. But would you rather have to deal with, hey, the package was stolen in the city and it's not here, and then we have to do it all over again? Maybe they get paid again when it gets shipped. They probably do. It's just, you know how much I would crush at being a delivery person? And I talked to Steven about this. I think we talked about it on the podcast. I would crush at any job because I give a shit. I want to do the job the best that I can for the customer. I want to do the best of the best with Honor Sir every time I step out there. And I've never been a server, a waiter, or anything. I guarantee you I would do a great job. That doesn't mean I wouldn't tell someone to fuck off, but I'm observant. I'm a really good assistant when it comes to assisting other photographers because I'm aware of the situation. I'm aware that the photographer's shooting. What might they need from me, right? Okay, you good on cards? Do you need me to back it up? Do you need this lens? Here, drink this water. Being an assistant is being ahead of the curve and knowing what the other person needs and being prepared for anything that might happen. That's a good assistant. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this episode. This is 108. Steven is away this week. Dan's away next week. I'm away the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So I'm not going to do a flying solo. And the reason Vanessa wasn't on this week is she's away on a photo shoot. And that's it. So this is what we get this week. We'll get back on track. There's a lot happening, I'm assuming, based off of rumors. And obviously we had the Z6 III. Oh, they also came out with a new... No, they didn't come out with something new. Yeah, no, they didn't come out with something new. No editing. Yeah. I'm gonna leave the episode right there. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Jared Polin for NosPhoto.com. See ya.